Getting around Sydney isn't hard, but if you don't know what you're doing, you might miss out on some chance opportunities to meet the locals, get scared off by a bit of bad weather, or even accidentally take the airport subway. Today, we're going to be going over how to get around Sydney. And like I said previously, it's an easy city to get around, but there are a few gotchas as there are in any city. First off, Sydney has an amazing public transportation system. Trains run throughout the whole city and can be used to reach almost any suburb in Sydney. The exception to this would be a lot of the eastern beaches. This would be Bondi, Koji, and all of those beaches. However, in the case of a lot of these beaches, you can actually use a light rail to get most of the way there and then take a bus. In fact, most cases where a train can't reach your destination, a bus will be what you end up using. In a few extremely lucky instances, instead of using a bus or train, you should actually be using a ferry. Ferries run all throughout the Parramatta River and go all the way to Manly. If you're looking to get to Manly or the Taronga Zoo and you're on water, a ferry is almost always the best choice. Not only because you can sit back, relax, and enjoy those seaside vibes, but because you might actually be able to see some Sydney locals that are a little hard to see if you're on the land. Additionally, when it comes to paying for all this, you are going to be using something called an Opal card. However, if you don't want to bother with an Opal card, you can use any credit card to tap on and off the subway, ferry, or bus system. The way that the public transportation works is when you tap your card on or off, you're charged based on the distance that you have traveled. Additionally, there is a max amount that you can be charged a day, so you should make sure that you always use the same card to tap on or off the Sydney public transportation system. One final thing we need to talk about is the airport. And no, Sydney doesn't have a helicopter network connecting the city, but that would be awesome. What Sydney does have is privately owned subway stations. When you take the subway system from the airport, you will be charged more, a good bit more. In fact, if you're a group of four and you're going to be taking the train just into the city, like the CBD, it might be cheaper for you to get an Uber. Always look into it though, because prices do change and this video could be out of date. So make sure you check the prices before you go ahead and order that Uber. But a lot of the time I have found Uber to be cheaper. Also, when it comes to getting around the city using rideshare, Uber is sort of the way to go. There's also another app that you can download called Didi. Both of these work pretty well and they'll get you throughout the city. It does cost a little bit more than a lot of other places or countries that you travel to. So do be warned, Ubers aren't cheap, but they're a good way to get around. In addition to that, if you're looking to rent an e-bike, you can use something like Lime through the Uber app. That said, e-bikes a lot of the time do end up costing more than just getting a car ride. So if you're getting a bike, you might want to get it just so you can see the city in a different way rather than to save money. And finally, for the parents out there, Uber might not work. Sydney is very strict when it comes to driving laws. In fact, looking at your phone while you're sitting in a drive-through can get you a ticket. It's happened. I know. It's crazy, but it's happened. So, when it comes to riding with kids, you always need a car seat. If you don't have a car seat with you, the one exception to this would be if you use a cab. Cabs cost more than Uber, they cost more than Didi, but you can take a cab if you've got kids. So that is worth noting, otherwise you're going to be stuck using public transportation. Buses aren't too bad to take with a stroller, and the trains are exceptionally easy. The only thing you do need to note for that is to watch the gap. It can be a big one. Another thing to note is if you're renting a car, like I said, the traffic rules, the driving rules, the safety rules here can be extremely strict. There are seatbelt cameras at some lights, and if a cop sees you playing with your phone, you will get a ticket. You don't want to mess around with the traffic laws here in Sydney because the tickets are pretty expensive. So my recommendation here would be make sure you're familiar with all the traffic laws before you come here. Do things like wear your seatbelt, don't play with your phone, and especially make sure you follow the speed limits. Also, for those of you who don't know, we drive on the left-hand side of the road. And if you do plan to rent a car, there's a lot of great agencies here. One I'd recommend would be No Birds Car Rental. It's probably the cheapest that you can find in Sydney. You won't get any fancy cars, but they do offer some really good rates, and it's something that I've used many, many times before. And now that we've covered cars, trains, light rails, ferries, and everything in between, we need to talk about walking because Sydney is actually a really walkable city. And when I say walkable, I'm not just talking about the downtown area. I'm talking about the whole city, the suburbs, everything. It is all extremely walkable. There are sidewalks everywhere here. If you are not seeing sidewalks in Sydney, it means you're either somewhere that's under construction, in the middle of the highway, or you're so far out that there's horses and cows and farm pastures. Yes, Sydney is very walkable. There's sidewalks everywhere. In addition to this, if you're in most parts of the downtown or even a lot of the downtown areas of suburbs, there will be overhangs covering sidewalks. This means whether it's rainy or super hot or sunny out, you will have a reprieve from the elements. Finally, if you need something a little bit more heavy duty, you can even go underground. There's a lot of tunnels that connect the city and connect various parts of the city. So if you see a lot of locals seeming to duck into malls or duck underground or duck into tunnels, follow them. A lot of these tunnels have tons of shops, places to explore. So whether you're just looking to get away from the elements or you want to do a little bit of sidewalk shopping without being outside, the tunnels are the perfect way to go. There's a really nice one that runs sort of through the main part of the city that has a ton of shops. It goes under the Queen Victoria building and it comes up right on George Street. It's a beautiful tunnel, tons of stuff to do there. And as a tourist, I'd almost recommend everybody goes through it. So, yeah, that is how you get around Sydney. Hopefully, this was fairly straightforward and to the point. If you have any questions, though, make sure you let me know. Otherwise, stay tuned to the channel for more amazing travel videos when it comes to Sydney and the globe in general. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy your time in Sydney.